Gaslighting, a favoured and frankly irreplaceable tool in the anti-fan's arsenal. Which is why it's so very important that if you have any intent of gatekeeping effectively, you be able to identify when gaslighting is happening to yourself or anyone else, and that you know how to effectively respond to it. So that is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. First and foremost, in case you are unfamiliar with the term, gaslighting specifically refers to a circumstance in which someone is lying to you, and they are doing so blatantly and straight to your face. And when confronted with evidence to the contrary or simply just an opposite opinion, they will double down again and again, either simply just ignoring all of your arguments or stating that you're the one who's in the wrong here. You made these things up. You're clearly a bad person for lying to them, for fabricating this evidence, and so on and so on. I'm sure a fair few of you are already starting to think to yourself, hold on a second, I've experienced this. Yes, you probably have. If you're a member of the 40k fandom, for example, your first encounter with this is in all due likelihood female space marines, a constantly reoccurring topic that is dredged up every year or so, where the statement is made, we need female space marines. Why? Diversity. There you go. More people will totally play 40k if we throw aside all of that silly old lore and simply just put some women in power armor. Obviously. And if you point out that 40k is already quite diverse, in fact with an entire army of power-armored women, they will simply just ignore you and carry on with their statements, reassured in the fact that they've already won now, because you have accepted their premises. You have accepted them into the conversation and tried to argue the opposite. Which surely can't be a bad thing, right? And, well, if you have no other choice, that is your only option. But I refer you to the dozens of content creators that were spawned out of the Gamergate movement, and the fact that most of those have long since been deplatformed. Because of course a crucial key component in effective gaslighting is to make the narrative as strident as humanly possible. This comes back again to the idea of the big lie that we talked about previously. The lie so ginormous, so massive, so absolutely absurd that there is surely absolutely no way anyone could ever believe it, right? Except then you look around and you see a gaming and hobby media in absolute unwavering lockstep with one another. And you start wondering if maybe you're the one who's wrong. Starting to sound eerily familiar, isn't it? Now, often, this form of gaslighting will be about specific topics. The diversity one is one of the more common examples, where they will simply insist that, oh no, increased diversity will absolutely bring more players and new people into the hobby. After 5 or 6 years of this nonsense, I think we can all firmly say that no, that does not appear to be the case. In fact, it is far more likely to drive old players away, or fans in general, as we have seen with the Star Wars trilogy or the recent He-Man train wreck. But I've already told you a lot about how to argue against such obvious things, and everyone and their grandmother has covered the absolute unambiguous failure of enforced diversity. That is hardly news and easy enough to recognize. Perhaps more insidious and interesting is often the things used against the deplatformed content creators. More often than not, these people haven't actually done anything wrong, certainly not anything illegal or warranting the destruction of their livelihood and the businesses that many of them have built over the course of years, but usually there is a narrative. Maybe they said something somewhere that has been taken far out of context. Maybe they did something. Maybe they released a video half a dozen years ago that can now be brought back into the light in an effort to deplatform them. Often it won't work the first time around, or the second time around, or the third time around, but if you have a narrative and you repeat it again and again and again, sooner or later you might find somebody in a position of power willing to listen. And if it doesn't work the first time, just build a bigger and better lie. An excellent example of this is a recent little bit of drama that I myself was involved in alongside another YouTuber by the name of Tex. He is a Battletech lore content creator, and since on my own lore channel I have been thinking for a while now that it is time to diversify my portfolio with history videos, with fantasy videos, with science fiction, you name it. I'm probably writing a script for it somewhere. And as some of you may already know, my co-host on the Archcast, Kyle, or Captain Kibbs, is a massive fan of Battletech and has been whinging my ear off incessantly for a solid 3 or 4 years at this point that I should do some Battletech lore. So I was considering that as well, but the Battletech community I felt was quite small and protected, so I figured, right, let's reach out to a highly recommended Battletech guy and we'll make a bit of a old school community spotlight video with him, talking about 40k, the fall of Games Workshop, about Battletech, the hobby, and life in general, whilst encouraging my audience to check him out. It seemed like the decent thing to do, you know? But, unfortunately, I have myself a very dedicated and fanatical little group of anti-fans, which tend to follow me around pretty much everywhere I go. They have long since given up on attacking me directly because, after 6 years, the best they got on me is a bunch of edited screenshots from a Discord server. Slim proof of my Nazihood, but oh well, details. And so when they discovered that I had made a video with another person, they immediately started digging into him and seeing if he could possibly be vulnerable for a little bit of mass external pressure. They began their brigading on the Battletech Reddit, where, much to the mod's absolute credit, they spotted them very, very quickly, leading to rather interesting little snippets like this one, where one of the moderator points out that, hold on a second, this is your first post on this Reddit ever, but you are a frequent poster to a Marxist communist Reddit. Perhaps your opinion should not be valued overly highly. The Reddit also saw a sudden increase in people posting, "I've been a long-term fan of Battletech," which, of course, had also never posted on the Reddit before. I refer you back again to weaponized hypocrisy and the big lie. This is not exactly an unknown tactic by this particular group of people. Lying is not wrong, so long as it serves an agenda, quite apparently. And they've also been known to use a fair few other underhanded tactics as well, like employing bots, for example, to strike out at videos. They, incidentally, were also the first ones to contact Games Workshop and try to make them take legal actions, first and foremost, against me. We can thank these people for the sudden boldness of GW in taking legal action against the fan community. And of course, we also have examples of the ever-growing lie. These two were sent to me from one of Tex's patrons. This is from his patron site then, and so since I'm putting these in a video now, I figured I'd blank out the name this once. I truly do believe that these people should be named and shamed, frankly, but as a courtesy thing. The first one reads, I'm only halfway through the interview, and Arch hasn't pushed any of his anti-SJW Jews to the oven scrap yet. When Arch is on his best behavior, it's easy to think he's just another disgruntled 40k fan. This person I actually quite like, because you can feel that if they'd only take a few minutes to analyze the situation, they might realize, hold on, anti-SJW. The SJWs. Let's look into that particular group. What have they been doing recently? Oh my god, transitioning 4-year-old children? Ooh, and Jews to the ovens. Yes, indeed. I imagine that is meant semi-sarcastically. But the next one, oh my Jesus. This is what I mean when, if the first attack doesn't work, then you try again, usually with a bigger lie. And this is how big the lie about me has grown. Since simply calling me a Nazi hasn't really resulted in all that much in the way of results, I'm just gonna read it to you. NMR, that is for the Nordic Resistance Movement, by the way, a Swedish group. The group Arch at least has been affiliated with before is, however, an actual Nazi terrorist organization with close economic and training camp cooperation ties to Russian paramilitary organizations. They have also a several decades-long history of political and xenophobic, murders, bombings, arsons, and riots, as well as personal ties to now deceased SS volunteers that survived World War II and evaded justice. Right. I am no longer a Nazi. I am actively affiliated with a Nazi terrorist organization with close ties to Russian paramilitary organizations and personal ties to SS volunteers. Holy hell. And again, could you ask for a better example of how the narrative simply just balloons? I've talked about this before, but I feel like a lot of the stuff, particularly surrounding me, will begin with a person going like, oh, don't you know he's a Nazi? And then a person goes, hold on, I've actually been watching Arch for like 3 or 4 years. He's not a Nazi. Can you substantiate any of this? And they go, well, 6 years ago he made a video on Knoblas, where he made a joke about their nose sizes. Which, don't blame me, blame GW. And of course, since that doesn't work and doesn't convince anyone, you gotta keep spinning that yarn until eventually you arrive at a lie so big that people will look at it and they'll be just, holy hell, this guy's gotta be an absolute monster. And they'll be so thoroughly frightened that they won't look up anything else. And I mean, hell, actual literal terrorist. Whilst, on the one hand, I do like the idea of myself as an international supervillain running a crime empire from my house in the middle of the forest in Norway, I have to object to my affiliation with a Swedish movement. I have certain standards, and sir, I draw the line right about there. Good God. What can you do but laugh at that point, eh? Now, this person in question was asked, alright dude, do you have anything to back this up? And he was like, I'll see if I can find something, but unfortunately, all of the sources will be in Swedish. Ah, yes. The Swedish sources about me and Norwegian. Oh, goodness gracious. Needless to say, I haven't heard about him actually producing anything, but, again, details, eh? And, boy, this really is the perfect example. I could not ask for a better one of complete and utter gaslighting, where the initial lie starts out small enough, quote unquote. He's a Nazi, don't you know? He likes Starship Troopers. Only Nazis like Starship Troopers, and he's into 40k, which you must understand is another fascist setting. Despite even making a whole video, of course, explaining why 40k really isn't all that fascist, through, well, goddamn simple reality, really, but once more, let's not get too deeply into that. Until eventually, once this is called out often enough, it's simply just repeated. First, the statement is repeated, and then a more insane statement, followed again by yet another insane statement, until you arrive at the current year. So, how do you combat this? If you see something like this and you feel compelled to defend my honor like the pretty little princess in the tower that I am, what do you even say? What do you even say to something like that? Well, if it's in the initial stages where they're simply just, oh, he's a Nazi, then you could just simply tell them, no, he's not. I have watched a bunch of his content. He's not a Nazi. And if they bring up, say, for example, the edited Discord leaks, simply tell them, there's a quote in there from Chris Rock, a black stand-up comedian. How many Nazis do you know that goes like, yeah, no, my favorite comedians are people like Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, and Eddie Murphy? That should shut them up quick enough, and it is also a nice little litmus test. If they then go, oh, okay, that is actually quite ridiculous, you know this is merely a person who has been misinformed. If they then, however, simply double down, you're on the receiving end of the gaslight. And at that point, ridicule is the only option, because you are talking to someone who has absolutely no interest in the truth, in the actual facts of the matter. They simply want to push a narrative, their own agenda. Now, it may very well be that they have simply been indoctrinated to the point where they cannot accept any other worldview, and that is damnably unfortunate, but you are never going to convince a person like that. It's much like a drug addiction, frankly. They're gonna have to reach rock bottom before they start seeing the light of day once more. Discussion is utterly futile with those people. So again, simply just mock them. Unironic communist, get the fuck out. And when they invariably respond with, you can't call me a communist, simply refer them back to when they called me a Nazi and so on, or more likely, when they start calling you a Nazi. Then start calling them socialists and little Austrians. That should wind them up nicely. And then you can retire safe and secure in the knowledge of a job well done. Because, again, the only way you can deal with gaslighting is to simply reject it outright, to mock it, to point out what is happening openly, and most importantly, ensure that the gaslighting does not affect you. Since, what's more, the goal of gaslighting is to get you to start questioning your worldview due to simply the strident, unflinching statements made by your opposition. So armed with this newfound knowledge, go my pretties, and gatekeep like you've never gatekept before. Until next time, I've been Arch, thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.